There we go.
Today's date is June 23rd, 2024. This is the Israeli-Palestinian federal government simulation with Professor Barak Medina of the Hebrew University in Jerusalem. We are proposing a federal government for the people of Israel and Palestine that would include the entire area, including the state of Israel, Palestine, the state of Palestine, Gaza, the West Bank, Jerusalem, and Israel, which is over 14 million people. A federal government that would be elected by the people of Israel and Palestine together based on a separate parliament, separate executive branch, and a separate judicial branch, all within the federal government. We are proposing that this federal government will be independent and separate from the Israeli and the Palestinian government, that it will be a unified government for the entire population of Israel, Palestine, elected by the people of Israel and Palestine based on a constitution. We are not proposing the dismantlement of the Israeli or the Palestinian governments. We are proposing the creation of an independent, separate government for the people of Israel and Palestine. For those of you who support two states or one state, we do not oppose any of these other solutions, but we believe that a federal government could actually, if needed, could create the two-state or the one-state. The federal government is not inconsistent with the idea of a two-state or one-state, and probably the best vehicle to create other solutions if those are necessary. The Israeli and the Palestinian governments have failed to give peace to the people of Israel and Palestine, and they have failed to do so for the last 76 years. So it's time to create a federal government for the people of Israel and Palestine, which will be on equal basis for Palestinians and Israeli together, based on a constitution, devoted exclusively for the purpose of making peace with the people of Israel and Palestine and the entire region. Our website is ipconfederation.org. You can read the Constitution when you go to our website. It's in English, Arabic, and Hebrew, and you can also read the frequently asked questions. The Constitution explains the manner in which this government will be created, how it will function, what are the separate branches of the government, and what will be the relationship between the Palestinian and the Israeli government with the third independent federal government that we are proposing. My name is Joseph Avasar, and you could reach me at josephavassar@gmail.com. Our guest today is Professor Barak Medina. Professor Barak Medina holds the Landecker Francis Chair in the Study of Protection of Minorities and Vulnerable Groups at the Faculty of Law of the Hebrew University of Jerusalem. He served as rector of the Hebrew University from 2017 to 2022, and the dean of the Faculty of Law from 2009 to 2012. Professor Medina studies Israeli and comparative constitutional law and human rights law. Among his recent publications, The Conflict over Israel's National Identity and the Constitutional Identity of the State of Israel. Professor Medina is a board member of the Israeli Association of Civil Rights and the academic director of the Minerva Center for Human Rights at the Hebrew University. Professor Medina graduated Harvard Law School and obtained his doctorate degree in economics from the Hebrew University in Jerusalem. He served as a visiting professor at the Law School of Columbia University in New York and the University of California, Berkeley. I met with Professor Medina on Zoom and gave him some idea of what the federal government is about, and we'll see what his opinions are during this simulation. Our next speaker will be Professor Amir Husroni. He is an anti-Zionist professor. He's also a professor of communication, a novelist, comedian, and supports the BDS movement. The next speaker after Amir Husroni is going to be Rabbi Hanan Schlesinger. He will speak on July 21st, 2024. He is an Orthodox Zionist rabbi who resides in Alon Shvut, located in Area C of the West Bank. Together on the same day, we will have Noor Awad, who is a Palestinian activist, who will speak at the same day as Hanan Schlesinger. Noor is an organizer of joint Palestinian-Israeli groups and speaks to visiting groups about his personal experiences regarding the conflict. I met Rabbi Hanan and Noor about 3 weeks ago when I visited the West Bank, and we had a conversation about the idea of a federal government. They have not given me their opinion. They asked questions. Hopefully, they'll give their opinion when we meet on July 21st, and hopefully it will be a positive opinion. On August 4th, we will have a journalist and an attorney, Yoela Har-Shefi. She will also give us her opinion regarding the IPC. These are the previous participants in the simulations. Some of them appeared twice. Noam Chomsky appeared twice and then recorded. I think he recorded the only time he endorsed a peace plan for Israel and Palestine is for the formula that we are proposing for an Israeli-Palestinian confederation government or federal government. We use the terms at the same time in the same way. These are people that we invited and unfortunately either refused to come or ignored us, but we will try to contact them again and again and ask them to join and give us their opinion. Why is it that they support or do not support a federal government for the people of Israel and Palestine? Many of them live in countries such as the United States, which have a constitution, which have a federal government. And I would be very interested in knowing why would they support a federal government in those countries and not support a federal government for Israel, Palestine. The simulation today will take approximately 120 minutes. It's divided into segments. Each segment is approximately 5 minutes. And after each segment, we will have questions for Professor Medina, and then the audience will also have an opportunity to ask questions. Professor Medina will be permitted to ask questions and to make his comments during each segment. We have a video that explains what the IPC is about. It's 2-minute video. I'd like to play it for those of you who have not seen it before.
The conflict between Israelis and Palestinians has endured for generations. And instead of time healing the wounds, it's only caused the anger to fester and the violence to grow. But what if there was a way to alleviate the tension? Something that may not outright solve every problem, but at least create a forum that encourages a peaceful compromise. Welcome to the Israeli-Palestinian Confederation, a common third government between the Israeli and Palestinian citizens, specifically designed to foster peace, tolerance, and economic prosperity between the two nations. Here's how it works. First off, both Israel and Palestine will keep their respective governments. Israel's Knesset and the Palestinian National Authority will remain unchanged. The Israeli-Palestinian Confederation, IPC, will be a third entity acting as a unifying agent between the two. The IPC will comprise 300 parliament members elected from 300 districts in Israel, the West Bank, and Gaza. Above them will preside a president and vice president, one Israeli and one Palestinian. In order for the IPC to pass a law, it will require a 55% majority from its Israeli representatives, as well as a 55% majority from its Palestinian representatives, thereby preventing either side from monopolizing the legislature. Of course, the IPC won't undermine the political power of either the Israeli or the Palestinian government. At any time, Israel or Palestine may veto a law passed by the IPC. If neither side vetoes, the law is passed. And the two nations are another step closer to resolution. Please help us make this a reality. The Israeli-Palestinian Confederation. We might speak different languages, but we all mean the same thing.
So we are actually going to simulate what we just saw in the video. Before we do the simulation, we take a survey, which we will compare to another similar survey or identical survey at the end of the simulation. So this time, I'm going to ask all of you to vote. Do you support a common federal government for the people of Israel, the West Bank, and Gaza that will coexist with the Israeli and the Palestinian government? Please vote yes or no on this question. Okay. End the polling and publish the results. 56 out of 60 voted yes, which is 93%. And 4 out of 60 voted no, which is 7%. Now, a lot of you have participated before, so that's clearly not going to be the sentiments in Israel, Palestine, but for this survey, right now, 93% of you said yes. So let's go to the next question, survey question, and that is, do you think that the Israeli and or Palestinian governments are capable of rebuilding Gaza? Please vote yes or no, and we'll compare that to we'll have the same survey at the end of the simulation. At this time, please vote. Are the Israeli or the Palestinian governments capable? Okay. 2 more seconds to vote. All right. Can you publish the votes?
Sure. About 71% of the people have voted, 72. So it looks like a few more people are voting. So I'm gonna.
Okay, so give
end
them
the poll.
more time to vote.
Yeah, 73%. Let's see. Okay, I'm gonna.
Okay, so publish the vote.
Wow.
20 out of 59 voted yes, which is 34%. And 39 out of 59 voted no, which is 66%. Okay, we will compare the votes now at the end of the simulation. The purpose of the simulation is to demonstrate how a common federal government gives options to the people of Israel and Palestine to make peace. It is not an Israeli government or Palestinian government, but it's a government for the entire area of Israel and Palestine. Professor Barak Medina is not a speaker for the IPC. He was invited to stress test the IPC and tell us what are the issues that he sees in favor or against the idea of a federal government. We expect to have a rigorous discussions, but I would like to emphasize that we do not preclude other formulas for peace, and we are not claiming exclusivity. We will ask Professor Medina to be fair and judge us on whether the IPC could make peace and whether the formula is attainable. If not, why not? But we will ask him to be fair in the sense that perfection is not the criteria upon which he should, or all of you should judge the formula. The criteria is, what is the alternative? What alternative does the government of Israel or the Palestinian government offer us? That's the fair criteria. We will show in this simulation how a federal government can thread the needle, meaning that it can pass legislation that neither the Israeli nor the Palestinian government could veto. Remember, they're given a veto power under the Constitution. But we have many, many legislation that shows that the Israeli and the Palestinian governments will have a hard time vetoing reasonable legislation that benefits the population of Israel and Palestine. We're asking you to look at the big picture because we are limited by time and avoid technical arguments. We're asking you to refrain from comments during the simulation, but we are encouraging questions. A federal government, the way we define it, or a confederation, is this: confederation governments exist worldwide to address specific conflicts. Some governments refer to themselves as federal governments, while others use the term confederation. Definitions are not fixed and evolve with changing realities. In the context of Israel-Palestine, the IPC defines confederation as a shared government for the people of Israel and Palestine, guided by democratic principles outlined in the IPC Constitution, which can be found at ipconfederation.org. That's in response to some people who say, well, you got to decide, are you a federation or a confederation? And we are saying we do not follow definitions. We create definitions. And the definitions that we follow is based on what's in the Constitution in ipconfederation.org. We are conducting a simulation. This is not a speech. A simulation is a model that mimics the operation of an existing or proposed system. That's what we are doing. We are asking you to ask questions. So if you see these pictures and you say, Joseph, how does this plane fly? That's a question. We encourage questions. But if you say airplanes cause pollution, that's a comment. That's not a question. Questions help understand the concept. Comments derail the discussion. They derail the simulation while preventing a full, uninterrupted presentation. We are asking for your courtesy in allowing us a full opportunity to present the IPC formula. We're asking you to make your comments at the end or write them on the Zoom chat during the simulation. This is the heart of the simulation. We are asking you to assume that we were able to obtain major funding to create a platform for an election online, on the internet, that we are able to obtain funding to recruit candidates for president and parliament in 300 districts, that we were able to advertise and explain to the people of Israel and Palestine the benefits of a federal government for the entire area. So this is the first assumption that we're asking you and Professor Medina to make. The second assumption is that we actually performed the election, and 14 million people that live in Israel, Palestine were able to vote. That's excluding children. So 14 million people is the total population. 4 million of them are children. So the adult population has voted. That's what we're asking you to assume. We're also asking you to assume that 5 million people voted, 3 million of them are Palestinian, and 2 million are Israelis. We asking you to assume that the president received 1.5 million votes. For purposes of helping me conduct this simulation, I'm asking
I
you to
am planning
assume
to
that
take the
I-
1025 vote
can you,
and grant.
please mute yourself, Joan. For purposes of conducting the simulation, I'm asking you to assume that me, Joseph, was elected as president. I never intend to run as president. I'm not even qualified under the Constitution, but it just helps me to run the simulation as if I am the president. You also have to assume that a Palestinian lady was elected by 1.3 million votes, and we will rotate in 2 years. I will become vice president and she will become president. This is in accordance with the Constitution. You will also have to assume that 300 parliament members were elected in 300 districts. Each district has 47,000 people. So 300 parliament members were elected. Now, before I ask Professor Medina to give his opinion regarding these assumptions, I'm going to ask you, the audience, to ask questions. Do you have any questions regarding these assumptions? Questions only. Please ask the questions. Raise your hands or just speak up. Don't be shy. Even question that you think doesn't make sense, don't be embarrassed to ask questions. This is the time to ask the questions. Okay, I don't see any questions or hands being raised to ask a question. Let me go to Professor Barak Medina. You need to unmute and give us your questions or opinions regarding these assumptions. Professor Medina.
Okay, thank you so much, Joseph, for the invitation. And of course, for this initiative, I think we all share the same view of trying to achieve peace. I'm not sure when do you suggest that I'll refer to the suggestion in general. So I'll restrict myself at this stage to these assumptions, and I would like to focus on one aspect, and this has to do with democratic legitimacy. You know, you asked us at the beginning of this session whether we support the idea of confederation, and we had to vote yes or no to this question. But this is something that, as I understand the structure, you do not offer the people in Israel and Palestine. As I understand it, we do not present them with the requirement of voting whether they would like to adopt this constitution or not, but rather just to vote in favor of a certain candidate or for president or parliament member. And I think that it might have an adverse effect on the legitimacy of establishing this confederation. I understand that the perspective is, well, the laws of each state are superior and there is veto power and things like that. But if we want to have this confederation a positive effect on the ground, on people's perspectives, and if we want governments of each of the states to feel obliged decisions of this federation, I'm not sure that it is the right move to bypass, the stages of a standard way in which states adopt a new constitutional order. The regular process is first have public deliberations about this new order that is reflected in a democratically elected assembly that drafts this proposed new constitution. And then you hold a vote, either a referendum or a vote at least through this elected assembly about the constitution itself, this new order. And only then, once we have agreed upon in a qualified majority, usually on the terms of this constitution, we go on and vote and elect the new institutions according to it. Now, it seems to me that what's going on here is that we just ignore the first two stages, and I understand why we do that. We do that because we are concerned that there is no majority currently among the populations in both Israel and Palestine that supports this new order, and we want to make them, I don't know, uh, uh, work through this process, have this kind of simulation in real life. But again, I think that it might be counterproductive to avoid this kind of democratic legitimacy. And moreover, if we refer to the specific numbers that we have in front of us, I'm concerned by the fact that, we have here only about 35% of the population that voted. Now, when a person is confronted with this process, each and every person has to decide first, should I vote or not? Because if I vote, I express my support in this confederation idea and the entire elements of the constitution. I do not have any other opportunity to express my view about this constitution. I should simply vote yes or no, or vote in favor of a certain candidate. So if I participate in the vote, I am actually required to express my support in this constitution, even if I oppose it. And if I do not vote, and in this way I want to express my opposition to this constitution, because this is the only way I have to oppose this idea of establishing a confederation, just don't vote, then I'm at the risk that the candidates that will be elected are not the ones that I support. And so it's a dilemma that we impose on the people on the ground without the opportunity to express their views on these two different subjects separately, whether they are in favor or against the Constitution, and what candidate do they prefer. And as I said, even if we ignore all that, what we have here is that only 5 million out of the 14 million, so this is just a little bit above 1/3, have voted. So if we refer to it as
4 millions are minors. It's 5 out of 10 million.
Okay, so still we have this process in which we try to infer people's understanding about the Constitution or support regarding Constitution from a vote on another issue. So this is something that I think should trouble us. And again, I'm saying all that not only because of formalities. I'm saying that following one of the comments, I think the first comments made by Ori, because why do we do all this process? What is the purpose here? And the purpose is, of course, to have peace, to have two communities living together. And again, it's we live in very troubling times, and this is an understatement. We are all under despair, and it's good to have hope, to have this kind of a way looking forward to another reality. But in order to achieve peace, we cannot just do tricks and, well, let's have their confederation and let's hope for good.
Why
in
not?
order to
Why
in
not?
order to achieve peace, we have to go through a process in which Israelis and Palestinians are starting to get used to live together in peace. For instance, let's talk about Israel for a second. I think the number one problem in terms of the Israeli government's activities has to do with the occupation. The fact that the Israeli government governs the lives of millions of Palestinians without voting rights and etc.
Professor,
The
can you
Israelis,
comment on the assumptions?
okay, so this refers to that because if we want
What is it about the assumptions that is not realistic, cannot be achieved? In your opinion?
Again, if we refer to the assumptions as reflecting the proportion of people on the ground that support the idea of a confederation, so it means, as you say, that the proportion is around 50% of the people on the ground support this idea. If we do that, given the current situation, without any process of, change in reality, the end of the occupation and other aspects, it seems to me to be too optimistic to assume that 50% of the people would vote this way. But as I said, for the purpose of a simulation, we can go on and live with it. It's not something that I have difficulty with.
Okay, so you're basically saying that you think 5 million people is too optimistic. 5 million people would vote, right? That's what you're thinking.
Unfortunately, yeah.
Unfortunately, that means you want more people to vote.
Sure, I want people to vote and have the opportunity to say whether they are in favor or against this constitution. I have difficulty in understanding this type of a process.
Can you show one example in that a country had a vote, a public vote on a constitution, on the acceptance of a constitution? The American government had a constitution, the public was not voted on it.
If I may interrupt, Chile had a vote on a constitution that was written by actually.
Well, no, I'm sorry. You need to hold your comments to the end. Only questions.
Yeah, of course,
right.
there are many countries that
Okay.
vote on the constitution. This is the standard. But regardless of that, the reality nowadays, whether we like it or not, is that there is a state. Israel is a state. Some refer to it as democratic, some refer to it as non-democratic, but there is a state out there. And the idea that you can infringe upon the sovereignty of this state by subjecting it to some other form of government with all kinds of mechanisms such as veto power and things like that, but yet you subject it to some kind of restraints without asking the people whether they are supportive of that or not, is something that, from my perspective, is problematic, not only, morally speaking, in terms of democratic legitimacy, but also from a practical perspective. If we want the people to be on board, to be involved, to accept the idea of a confederation, we have to let them make their statement.
Professor, with all due respect, this sounds like a very disingenuous argument because Israel controls the Palestinian now in the West Bank and Gaza, not asking them to vote, not giving them any rights, and to claim that in order to be legitimate, you have to give the people the right to express themselves by voting. That sounds like totally disingenuous. You can. All right. Joseph. I think let's go into the next step, and that is we're going to be asking the parliament. We're going to ask the audience here to be either. Well, actually, I asked it ahead of time for volunteers. Jeff Warner to be the Prime Minister of Israel and Saeed Aziz as the President of Palestine. You're both here, correct? I see you're both here.
I'm going
to be asking the audience to decide whether you are Palestinian or Israeli parliament member, and you'll have to decide whether you are in Israeli or Palestinian, representing a district in either a mixed district, meaning Palestinians and Israelis living together, or Palestinian only, meaning like, for example, in Gaza, or in Israeli only in Tel Aviv. So at this time, I'm going to be asking you, the audience, to choose whether you are Palestinian or Israeli parliament members. So Nasir, can you put the voting for people to choose whether you are parliament member, Israeli or Palestinian? See how many we have. Please choose whether you are Palestinian or Israeli parliament member.
I think we will have good agreement with the Prime Minister of Israel because we were in green at the same time without even.
Okay.
plan.
All right. So we have 26 Palestinian parliament members and 19 Israeli parliament members
So we have
who
about,
have voted. So whether or not the professor agree with the legitimacy or not, the election has been conducted, and we have voted, and we have a parliament with 300 parliament members, and we have a president. I am acting as the president. We are going to the next step, and that is a constitution. So we are now ratifying the constitution, and we're asking the parliament to ratify the constitution. Before we ratify, we're going to read the important part of the constitution, and we'll have Libby, could you please read it out, please?
We believe that Palestinians and Israelis are entitled to equal rights under the law and guaranteed human rights and freedom. The Israeli-Palestinian Confederation does not intend to supersede or supplant the Palestinian or Israeli governments, nor to abrogate or undermine any agreements between those governments. We recognize the need to work with the Israeli and Palestinian governments. Our purpose is to resolve conflicts and to expand the relationship between Palestinians and Israelis in a fair and equitable manner. We believe in equal rights under the law, guaranteed human rights, and freedom for all. We voluntarily give the legislatures and the governments of Israel and Palestine veto power over legislation we pass relating to the domain of control of those governments. We believe in the separation of power between the legislative, executive, and judicial branches. We believe in the creation of a permanent secular government for all the people residing in Israel and Palestine. We believe in having a separate judicial branch relating to IPC legislation with Israeli and Palestinian judges, with a system to avoid biased decisions based on nationality.
Okay, so this is a kind of a summary of the important part of the Constitution. It's not word by word, but we just make it easier for the purpose of the simulation. The important part is that the federal government does not intend to supersede or supplant the Palestinian or the Israeli government. They can agree to whatever they want, including 2 states, 1 state, whatever it is they agree upon. Constitutionally, the federal government is prohibited from undermining those agreements. The second important part is that we, the federal government, we give a veto power to the Israeli and the Palestinian governments if our legislation, the laws that we pass, violates their sovereignty. So if the law violates their sovereignty, they have a veto power. If they veto the law, then it's not going to pass. Before I go to Professor Medina, I want to give an opportunity for the audience to ask questions. Please, questions only, not comments. Do you have any questions regarding the Constitution? And then we're going to go to the parliament members and ask you to ratify the Constitution. Okay, if you have any questions, please raise your hand. I see no, oh, okay, someone, please speak up.
Yeah, thank you. I would like, my name is Alpesh Plassen, University of Arizona. I would like to know what happens if either side vetoes legislation, then would that not be a complete stalemate? What is the good then if both governments have veto power?
Well, the idea is that we are going to pass legislation that threads the needles, meaning that it will be very difficult for them to veto when they are vetoing against their own people. So we are the federal government, we have the legitimacy coming from the people, and it would be very difficult for the Israeli or the Palestinian government to veto legislation that brings peace and prosperity to their own people, because they will be embarrassed worldwide and by their own people if they veto legislation that is good for their people. And that's what we are showing in the simulation. Ori, do you have a question? Ori, please ask your question.
You should unmute, or
You need to unmute.
Yeah, okay. Can we decide upon the name of the confederation? What will be the new name of the confederation? Isratin, for example, or what?
The parliament will decide everything. We are not really proposing any substantive law other than to demonstrate, but we are proposing a system of government that would give the people of Israel and Palestine, through their parliament members, their option to decide on the name, on the flag, on borders, if borders are necessary, on refugees, on Jerusalem, on every issue, it will be decided by the parliament. We are only proposing a system, a federal system for the people of Israel and Palestine. Any other questions?
Can I comment?
No, please wait until the end. Any other questions? Okay, I see no other questions. No one raises his hand. Let's go to Professor Medina. Professor Medina, please
okay.
go. Please tell us what you're thinking.
Well, I have questions really that are not necessarily informative, but trying
Regarding
to
the
infer what's going.
Constitution, please.
Yes, regarding the Constitution. Three questions. First, does the Constitution prevent Israel from continuing its occupation? Because it seems, at least from I read, that the Constitution would not prevent Israel from acting as it does today. And I'm not saying it in favor of the Constitution, of course. Secondly, I'm not sure that I understand what are the powers of this confederation, because I know the answer, well, the powers will be what the parties will agree upon. But still, we have to
That's not the power.
understand.
The power is the legitimacy that the government has from the people of Israel and Palestine. And this
Yeah, but-
legitimacy, the Israeli and the Palestinian governments do not have that legitimacy. That's the power. That's the power that is given to the government, the federal government,
Yeah.
through
No.
elections.
Okay, I mean, the Constitution does not state what powers the Confederation has, right? There is
No, it
nothing
says
about
that
army, about police,
no, that's
about
not true.
taxes.
Even what is in front of you, the Confederation has the power to pass legislation for the whole area of Israel and Palestine by 55% of the Palestinian parliament members and 55% of the Israeli parliament parliament members. The federal government does not assume the existence or non-existence of the Israeli or the Palestinian governments. It's
okay.
not based on whether the Israeli or the Palestinian governments will exist forever. It's not against the Israeli or the Palestinian government. It's for the people of Israel and Palestine.
Yeah, but it's striking to me to see that, you know, this constitution is based in part on the American Constitution, but the American Constitution very carefully delineates the powers between the federal government and the specific states in terms of limiting the aspects in which the federal government can act, and vice versa regarding the states. And here, for instance, there are issues about army, about immigration policy, about foreign relations. We might have a conflict between the two bodies. So I understand that according to the vision here, we put our trust on the process, on this voting mechanism, without establishing any substantive limitations on issues that the federal government can act upon, if I understand correctly.
No, the federal government cannot pass legislation that advances religion, for example.
This I understand. Yeah,
Okay.
but not about substance issues. And
No,
in this
it does have substance.
I mean no substance and limitations. In terms of
the federal government,
taxes.
look, the federal government that we are proposing is based on the reality that Israel and the Palestinians, that Israel has a government and the Palestinians have some sort of a government. It has a reality of whether it will be accepted by the Israeli and the Palestinian people. So the federal American government is superior to the state because that's what the states agreed upon. We do not think that if we create a federal government that will be superior to the government of Israel or the Palestinian government, the public will reject that because of the strong nationalistic sentiments on the part of the Palestinians and the Israeli people. But if we offer them an option to veto, then there is much more likelihood of acceptance of the federal government. We do not have to be a copy of the American government or American Constitution. You set up the Constitution based on the reality on the ground.
Sure. Okay. And so I'm not sure about the first question, and it relates to the third question. The first question was, does the Constitution prevent Israel from continuing its occupation? Is there something in the Constitution that would prevent Israel from continuing its occupation or not? And it relates to the third question about human rights. The Constitution requires the federal government to be respect certain human rights, not all human rights, but let's assume all human rights. And it requires the Confederation to be democratic, obliged to democratic principles. But I'm not sure that it imposes any restrictions on the governments themselves, on the states themselves, in terms of human rights or democratic principles and things like that. We deliberately avoided these kind of restrictions on the states themselves?
Yes, the Constitution does not, is not superior to the government of Israel or the Palestinian government. It's not superior to them constitutionally. It is by purpose stating that the Israeli and the Palestinian government will have a veto power. Therefore, if the Constitution stated that it prohibits the occupation or prohibits the Palestinians from doing certain things, then it becomes a subversive organization against the state of Israel and against the Palestinian government. We do not want to be a subversive organization. We want to be a grassroots organization that has more legitimacy, really, than the Israeli and the Palestinian government, and offers an option for the people of Israel and Palestine. We're not here to confront the Israeli and the Palestinian government and to seek their to undermine them, but to work with them.
Okay.
Okay, let's have a vote.
Joseph, there's a person with their hand raised before,
Okay,
Barak
okay,
Medina spoke. It's Ruth
a
Ben
person
Ali.
who is acting, has his hand raised, please ask your question.
Ruth.
Okay, they lowered their hand. We can
Okay,
go ahead.
I don't know, is that me? I raised my hand
No,
earlier.
it was Ruth, but she lowered her hand, no problem.
okay. All right, now we are going to ask the Palestinian and the Israeli parliament members to ratify the Constitution. Just so you understand that since you are a parliament member, you must ratify the Constitution. Otherwise, you will be expelled from the parliament. Every parliament, democratic parliament, members have to accept the Constitution just like any other government in the world. So let's start with the Palestinian parliament members. Please ratify the Constitution, Palestinian parliament members.
So this is for Palestinians only.
Yes. Okay. And okay, 2 more seconds to vote. We need to move fast. So, all right, publish the vote. 100% of the Palestinian parliament members ratify the Constitution. Let's go to the Israeli parliament members. Please ratify the Constitution. Israeli parliament members. Okay, publish the vote. 94% of the Israeli parliament members voted yes. 1 voted no. That person is expelled from the parliament, and the person who received the second number of votes from his district or her district will become the parliament members, and that person is not permitted to vote on any legislation. Let's go to our next issue, and that's granting a veto power to the separate governments. Libby, could you please read the legislation on granting the veto power?
The Confederation is the government of the entire population of Israel and Palestine from the river to the sea. We recognize the Palestinian and Israeli governments and are seeking their cooperation to implement our vision for peace by giving them a veto. We will do our utmost to satisfy the essential needs of each government. We are pleading with the Palestinian and Israeli public to understand that while we would like to pass the best legislation possible to improve their lives, under these constraints, a perfect legislation is not possible. We hereby bestow a veto power relating to legislation affecting sovereignty to the following: the government of Israel on issues in which it is indispensable, the Palestinian government on issues in which it is indispensable. In the event of changes in the entirety of the Israeli or Palestinian governments, this legislation may be amended or repealed subject to the IPC Constitution. The Parliament will decide on indispensability. Vetoes may be bestowed individually or collectively.
All right, some people ask me, what's the difference between dispensable and indispensable? So when we vote on issues relating to land or police force or removal of the wall, the government of Israel and the Palestinian governments are maybe indispensable. However, on issues relating to the IPC budget or ratifying the Constitution or appointing ministers or judges, the governments of Israel and Palestine are dispensable and they do not have a veto power. I've been asked, why are we giving a veto power? Because a veto power provides a safety net to both sides. It makes sure that the legislation is reasonable and increases the likelihood of Israelis and Palestinians participating in the election and in the process of running for parliament and president. It decreases the Israeli and the Palestinian government's opposition to the federal government that we are promoting. It removes any claims that the IPC is has subversive intentions, and it gives legal protection to candidates who are running or been elected. It compels the IPC to thread the needle. That's what I spoke about at the beginning. It compels the IPC to pass legislation that both sides will not find objectionable, that would benefit the people of Israel and Palestine, and it basically creates a platform for negotiations with a deadline. Does anyone have, on the audience, does anyone have any questions regarding the veto power? Questions only, please. Do you have any questions? Please raise your hand. Okay, I see no hands being raised. Let's go to Professor Medina and ask him to give his opinion regarding the legislation on the veto power.
Well, two comments. First, maybe Jonathan should mute. One issue has to do with other issues that are indeed indispensable, because if we refer to the examples that you just gave, for instance, imposing taxes in order to enforce the decisions of the Confederation, the Confederation will have to impose its powers on citizens of either states. So I'm not sure, can we have any enforcement mechanisms regarding requirements from specific individuals within each state without the consent of these governments? And
the question of taxes is indispensable. The Israeli and the Palestinian governments, if we want to impose taxes on the people of Israel and Palestine, clearly the government of Israel and Palestine are indispensable.
Well, I am a citizen of the state of Israel, and now this confederation requires me to pay taxes, and I refuse to pay these taxes. And the confederation will have to employ some kind of governmental powers against me within the territory of the state of Israel. So the state of Israel will have to make a decision whether it allows this other entity to execute these kind of governmental powers within its territory against its own citizens. It's not indispensable.
Correct. We are not proposing a second-class government. We are proposing a first-class government, a government that would bring peace and prosperity to the people of Israel and Palestine. And if we are able to reduce substantially the security, the weapon spending, and the killing of Palestinians and Israelis, if we can reduce that substantially, then imposing a little bit of taxes would actually benefit the people of Israel and Palestine, and this would force the Israeli and the Palestinian government to deal with the real issues. Why are they not able to give peace? Why are they imposing so much taxes on their people? Why are their people being killed? And this government is proposing another solution, and they will have to make the decision to accept it or decline it. And if we come up with a reasonable solution for taxes that would benefit the people of Israel and Palestine, that would reduce their taxes, that would reduce the amount of wars and killing, then it would be very difficult for the Israeli and the Palestinian government to veto it. That's the whole idea.
Okay, let's hope. And yeah, the main issue here, there is this trade-off. If we refer to this confederation as only making suggestions and trying to talk to the senses of the government there, I think it's perfectly right. Well, how can you oppose a body that gives advices, and we hope that the advices are good and hope that people will, the government will accept it. The problem is what is the basis for assuming that this,
look, this is
because of the veto power. I'm concerned about this.
Barak, this is humiliating what you're saying. We have just been elected by 5 million people. I am the president of the federal government. I have been elected by more people than the Israeli government has been elected. I have legitimacy from the entire area, and you are referring to our government as a government that is giving suggestions? We are the only legitimate government in Israel-Palestine. The Israeli government is not a legitimate government in Israel-Palestine. It's not been elected. The Palestinian government are not the legitimate government. This is totally humiliating that you are referring to us as giving suggestions.
No, I mean, I did not intend to humiliate anyone.
I understand it's hard for you to accept the assumptions.
No. I refer to the assumptions as such, because the fact that the Constitution gives this veto power, it means that the decisions of the Confederation are, in fact, suggestions. We suggested, we hope that you, the government, would not veto our decision, and in this respect, it is a suggestion. And in this respect, I'm talking about from the legal perspective, the fact that you give veto power to someone that is subject to your powers, it means that you do not really have powers. You try to convince him. You do not impose on him your will, but you need his consent for this decision to be implemented.
No, they are not suggestions. They are the law until you veto it. They're the law. This is the law until you decide to veto it. It's not subject, it's not waiting. It's until you veto it. That's the law of the land of Israel-Palestine. All right, let's have the parliament members, Palestinian parliament members, please vote on this legislation. Palestinian parliament members, please vote on granting a veto power. All right, publish the vote. 92% of the Palestinian parliament members voted in favor of granting the veto power. Let's go to the Israeli parliament member. Please vote, Israeli parliament members. Okay, publish the vote. 100% of the Israeli parliament members voted in favor of this legislation. Let's go to the first substantive.
Joseph Shlomo raised his hand. Maybe he wants to say something about.
Shlomo, do you have a question?
Quick, we do, don't you think we do have an inferior position compared to the government of Israel, especially government of Israel, if they can veto? So in a way, Barak was right. You know, it's not a suggestion.
No, we do not have an inferior position. We are the only government that has the legitimacy from the people of Israel and Palestine. The only superior power that they have is the power to veto, and we recognize it. But in terms of legitimacy, in terms of our ability to deliver for the people of Israel and Palestine, we are a proud government of the entire area that it has legitimacy, unlike the existing Israeli and Palestinian governments that do not have legitimacy in this area of Israel-Palestine. And we are going to capitalize on that legitimacy and embarrass, if necessary, the Israeli and the Palestinian governments and show how preposterous they are in refusing to accept reasonable legislation. All right, let's go to rebuilding Gaza and southern Israel. Charles, are you here? Libby, can you read the legislation, please?
The IPC is the only legitimate government in Israel and Palestine, consisting of 300 parliament members, elected by the entire population. Approximately 125 members represent the destroyed areas. The IPC is committed to the well-being of all people, including the 5 million individuals directly affected by the violence since October 7th. The IPC believes that the future of the Gaza and Israeli people is interconnected. It is unlikely that the Israeli and Palestinian governments will be able to restore a normal, peaceful existence in the foreseeable future. The IPC is requesting a $50 billion grant from the international community, which includes Israel and Palestine, to fund and coordinate the rebuilding of the devastated areas. The IPC will prioritize the following: rebuilding thousands of homes, roads, hospitals, civic buildings, and the infrastructure to facilitate the immediate return of all people to their homes. Restoring the law and order and civil society that have been destroyed. Developing safe routes for peaceful movement of Palestinians between the West Bank and Gaza in both directions. To achieve this rebuilding, the IPC is calling for an immediate ceasefire and the immediate return of all political prisoners in Israel and Palestine to their homes. Both the Israeli and Palestinian governments are given veto power.
All right, does anyone have any questions from the audience regarding this legislation? All right, so let's take a vote, and then we'll have the Israeli and the Palestinian parliament members, Israeli and Palestinian leaders veto or not veto this legislation. Palestinian parliament members, please vote. This is for Palestinian parliament members. Okay. 2 more seconds for voting. Publish the vote. 95% of the Palestinian parliament members voted yes on this legislation. Israeli parliament members, please vote. Okay, publish the vote. 100% of the Israeli parliament members voted in favor of this legislation. Let's go to the Israeli Prime Minister. Mr. Prime Minister, are you going to veto this legislation? You need to unmute. Mr. Prime Minister of Israel, are you going to veto this legislation?
The government of Israel believes that any rebuilding within Israel has to be controlled by the Israeli local municipal agencies that are in charge of building. And the Israeli government will accept funds from the IPC, some of that $50 billion, to help do the rebuilding. But the rebuilding has to be done under the control of the Israeli municipal government, and therefore it is vetoed as it stands.
Okay. Do you see anything inconsistent with your position in this legislation?
The legislation suggests to the Israeli government that the IPC will be controlling the building. The building within Israel has to be controlled by Israeli governments, namely the municipal governments.
It says very clearly, Mr. Prime Minister, the IPC will prioritize the following. It doesn't say anything about controlling the areas in Israel. So if prioritizing means working with you, that's what it means, working with your government to rebuild southern Israel.
Well, I'd certainly like it clearer. That has to be, if that was cleared up and explicitly stated in that way, we would accept it. But building within Israel has to be controlled by the Israeli government.
Okay, and building, so that's your only condition?
Yes.
All right, thank you. So we can work with that. That's no problem. Let's go to the Palestinian president. Mr. President, are you going to veto this legislation?
I'm not going to veto it. I will agree with it. But what's concerning me all the time, every time you speak to any level of Israelis, they always come with me. It's us. It's how we feel, how we going to do it, how we control it. As an example, if my area will be required construction, what does the Prime Minister of Israel have to do with this? So I believe.
Well, he's only talking about southern Israel, not Gaza.
Okay. Anyway, I'm not going to veto this. I'm okay with that.
All right. Thank you. All right. So this legislation was passed by the parliament. The Israeli and the Palestinian parliament presidents, leaders did not veto it. I think that this is a good example of threading the needle and not even requiring taxes from the Israeli or the Palestinian public, because we have legitimacy and we've passed a constitution that has never been passed throughout the world in history of the Israeli-Palestinian or the Middle East, for that matter. And so we're going to capitalize on our election and on our constitution to request $50 billion from countries and companies and all over the world. Let's go to Professor Barak Medina.
I have a quick question.
Shlomo has his hands up.
Okay, what's your question, Shlomo?
So the first legislation should be, in my opinion, just why not, ending the occupation. First and foremost.
Well, what's your question regarding this legislation?
Why this is number one? Number one should be end the occupation.
Because that's the burning issue right now, is to rebuild Gaza. You see, the Israeli and the Palestinian and Hamas are not able to deal with Gaza. They're not able to deal with southern Israel. They're walking around with weapons and killing each other, killing thousands of Palestinians and many Israelis. The Israeli and the Palestinian governments have no answer to what's going on. They have no vision. So what's wrong with having this as the burning issue?
No, nothing. I'm sorry. It is not related to this particular. I agree 100% with this. I'm just asking, why not having a legislation that says first end the occupation, number one. Number two, give equal rights. And then go on. But this is okay, after Gaza and all of that, after they kill everybody in Gaza. Yeah, let's...
So, are you a parliament member?
Yeah.
Are you Israeli or Palestinian?
Israeli.
Okay. So you need to draft the legislation that you want, okay? And submit the legislation. This is not just going to be handed to you. You need to work hard as a legislator, as a parliament member, and not just complain. Do the work. Do the hard work.
Okay.
All right. Let's go to the professor. Professor, do you have comments regarding this, what you just seen?
No, I think it would be great if the Confederation is able to raise this funding. I think that the income of money is, of course, beneficial to all sides. There is this issue of there is some noise in the background. There is this issue of before the last line, to achieve this rebuilding, the IPC is calling for an immediate ceasefire and immediate return of all political prisoners in Israel and Palestine to their homes. Okay, I assume this is just a general statement without any enforcement power, any power to be enforced, but so if it's just a regular, just a
but
general
you just
statement,
saw the Prime Minister of Israel accepted it, and Palestinian leader accepted it.
Yeah, I'm just trying to understand what does it mean political prisoners? Do we refer to the hostages that are held by Hamas as political prisoners? This is
Yes,
the term. Okay, I see.
of course. So the question is not whether the legislation is good. The question is whether we were able to demonstrate for you how the federal government could thread the needle and pass legislation that neither side could veto. That's the question, not whether the legislation is good.
We did not demonstrate anything. We just asked, well, would you agree to
We
accept
did. The
several
Prime
billion
Minister of
dollars? Yeah,
Israel,
sure, we all agree. Why not? What's this? You know, there's no real conflict here. If you try to, if you're asking, are you willing that $50 billion will be added to the general pie? Well, why not? I think that in order to demonstrate that IPC can work, we have to find something which is conflicting, that there is a conflict of interest between both sides. Here, it's something that it's hard to reject, to object. Why not? So it's
okay.
I don't see any objection to rebuilding.
All right.
So
So
Can I ask a question?
That's the whole point of the IPC, is to show you that a federal government could pass legislation that the people of Israel and Palestine would say, why not? That's, you asked the right question. Why not? All right.
Can I ask a
Your
question? Can I ask a
Do
question?
you have a
to-
question?
Yeah, to Mr. Barak. Mr. Barak, do you think that
His name is Barak Medina.
Okay, Mr.
Barak is fine. That's
Mr.
fine.
Barak
Barak is
Medina. Okay,
just Barak. Yeah.
sure, thank you.
Professor Medina.
Yeah, okay. Do you
Although
think
I saw in one of the notes that someone wrote that it said how illegal citizens in my country worry about taxes. So it's difficult to have this kind of a discussion if one refers to my homeland as a place in which I'm illegal citizen. But I will not go into this.
that's
argument
yeah,
here.
yeah. There'll be people with those opinions. But anyways, what I'm saying is, could you see the usefulness of the IPC Confederation, IP Confederation, that if it was to say, for example, to gather support to raise like $50 billion in grants from international organizations, that this would kind of sense be a tool to influence both the governments of Israel and Palestine to pursue policies that they would consider would be promotions of peace and coexistence. So that in a sense could be useful.
Again, if you ask me, in theory, in general, I would say yes. But again, I can speak about the Israeli government that I know better. And the current Israeli government, I'm afraid, is not a partner for these kind of issues. They will object this type of process in which someone else dictates for it what to do. Again, I'm not supporting it. I'm not saying that they are right in doing so, even if I'm an illegal citizen somewhere. I'm just saying that trying to reach to the Israeli government to make them agree to this very sensible suggestion, you need to take into account their own fears, their own concern. What is their fear? We all know they are concerned that this money, as was arguably the money that came from Qatar, will be used for reconstructing the tunnels, for purchasing new rockets and things like that. And they will try to oppose this kind of a grant. Again, I'm not saying justly so. I'm just describing what I am concerned that will be the outcome. Again, Joseph would say, here you see, in our in this process,
Simulation.
there was no veto. But if I refer to reality, I'm concerned there, and we need to give the Israeli government some kind of assurance that this money will be spent on the causes that are mentioned here. I don't have any simple solution. What is the mechanism that will ensure that the money will be used for the right purposes? I'm just suggesting that there is a concern that at least the current Israeli government would oppose this kind of a process. I hope that I'm wrong and they will agree to it. But as I said, this is something that we should be aware of.
Professor Medina, you said the current reality, and I agree with you. There is a current reality. And under the current reality, you have the Israeli government and the Palestinian and Hamas governments acting against each other. What we are saying is, democratically, by way of election, we can create a different reality, a reality that they will have to deal with, both the Palestinian and the Israeli government. And that reality could be created by a process of election, by a process of having parliament members. Then they will have to deal with a different reality. And it's going to be very difficult for them to use the same concept that they are using against each other, to use that against the federal government, because the federal government is made out of Israelis and Palestinians together, people who are accepted a constitution, pledge allegiance to a constitution, Israeli and Palestinian citizens who are competing with the Israeli and the Palestinian governments, who are saying enough is enough. You have not been able to give us peace. That's the new reality that we are proposing.
Yeah, but I think that
I have a question, Joseph, for Professor Medina. I am the one who wrote illegal citizens in my country. I'll ask you a question. What is a legal area for you to live in your homeland, whatever you want to call your homeland? What is legal for you to live?
I'm not sure that Joseph would like to answer this now.
Wait. No. This is, we'll have an open discussion. All right, let's go to the next, and that's a joint economic zone. Libby, could you read the legislation on a joint economic zone?
Joint Economic Zone, JEZ, between Israel and Gaza. Exclusive IPC management and control in cooperation with the existing governments. Common economy. Education, industry, banking, agriculture, sewer treatment, desalination plants, solar farms, wind power, and green energy. International airport and seaport. Equally accessible to Israeli and Palestinians. We hereby submit this legislation to the Israeli government, the Palestinian governments. We bestow upon them a veto power which may be exercised in the next 60 days.
Does anyone in the audience have any questions regarding this legislation? Please raise your hand. Questions only. Okay, I see no questions. Let's have a vote, and we'll ask the Israeli and the Palestinian leaders to decide whether they're vetoing, and then we'll go to Professor Barak Medina. Palestinian parliament members.
Yeah, Palestinians only. Palestinians only.
Palestinians only. Okay, publish the vote. 89% of the Palestinian parliament members voted in favor of this legislation. Remember, these are parliament members, people who are elected by the people of Israel and Palestine in a duly democratic elections. Okay, let's go to the Israeli parliament members. Please vote. Publish the vote. 92% of the Israeli parliament members duly elected by the people of Israel and Palestine parliament members voted in favor of this legislation for a joint economic zone. Is the Israeli Prime Minister going to veto this legislation? Mr. Prime Minister, are you going to veto?
The Israeli government thinks that a joint economic zone is a good thing, and we do not want to veto it. But I will hold. But we really need much more detail to show that the interests of Israel will be protected within this zone. So the general concept I will approve of, we will not veto.
All right, let's go to the President of Palestine. Mr. President, are you going to veto this legislation?
I will veto it because I don't trust this. I don't trust making business with the Israelis right now. I don't trust having the same airport, traveling the same time. With our experience in the past 75 years, we did not have freedom to have our zones. We didn't have our freedom to have our airport. So it is something maybe I think about later, but there is more important things than worrying about an airport and about economic zones right now, because us as a Palestinian, we've been living under the mercy of Israelis. Even today, they are cutting our taxes, and Ben Gvir and Smotrich keeping it for settlers.
Mr. President, all your comments have nothing to do with the joint economic zone that we are proposing. We are proposing under the exclusive management control of the IPC. It's not with the state of Israel. It's with the federal government that is elected by the people of Israel and Palestine, with Palestinian people. There are about 30 parliament members in Gaza that most of them voted in favor of this. Are you going to deny the people in Gaza the opportunity to have employment, to have an international airport, to have an international seaport? Is that what you're going to do?
Anything under the IPC, I will agree with. I was thinking it's under different things. So if it's under the IPC,
so you're not vetoing this legislation.
Saeed, speak as the president, the current president, not as Saeed, because I think sometimes you the person is overpowering the president, who is today the president.
Okay, so the president of Palestine has not vetoed this legislation.
As today, I'm not speaking.
Right. Let's go to Professor Barak Medina. Do you have any comments regarding this legislation that has not been vetoed and has been voted upon by the parliament members, Palestinians and Israelis?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, again, I think this is, of course, a very important initiative, and let's all hope that one day it will be realized. But I think I would like to return to Nasir's question earlier, and it applies to this issue as well. And I'm trying to address just for a second the position of the current Israeli government, the real one, just for this simulation for us to consider what are the prospects of making a change in their own position. And if we refer to the current Israeli government, and unfortunately, when I see the position of at least the Jews among the Israelis, I'm not sure that it's going to change. They raise two types of consideration. One aspect has to do with racism. Well, we are superior, we are better, we don't want to share our resources with the Palestinians, etc. Now, if you deal with someone who is so strongly against cooperation, the idea that, well, because the IPC has this one way or another of legitimization, popular legitimization, that will change their position, I'm not sure that it will be enough. We have to work harder to change minds, but this is one possibility. The other possibility, and this is something that I already mentioned, has to do with the concern of security issues. This entire idea that having a military that imposing limitations on importing goods into the Gaza Strip before the current war was based on this issue of security concerns. Now, again, we can ignore it. We say, well, this is something that is irrelevant. They are lying. But I think that we should take into account this concern of the Israeli government, the Israeli population, that these kind of benign projects will be abused in order to launch an attack against Israelis or something like that. And again, I'm not talking here about whether this concern is just or not. I'm just talking about the fact that it is out there within the perspectives of many of the Israeli or Jewish population among the Israelis. And that issue that we have to deal with is whether the fact that this project will be exclusively managed by the IPC is sufficient to mitigate these concerns or not. I don't have a clear answer to that, but I think that we have to work it out in addition, on top of issues of general legitimacy or moral aspect or things like that. We are talking about people's perspectives, perceptions about their own lives. Again, Said mentioned earlier the issue of lives of Palestinians, mocking my reference to taxes as if I'm concerned about taxes, not about human lives. And this cannot be nothing further from the truth. I gave the example of taxes just in order to demonstrate the issue of the inevitability of the IPC to be involved in the so-called domestic activities within each of the states. Of course, the number one issue is not taxes, it's about human lives. And human lives are precious on both sides. And I think that we cannot ignore or afford ourselves to ignore the fears that both sides have from each other. And this is why I think that we need additional mechanisms, a process through which trust can be built. The idea that we should trust the IPC, everything will be perfect, I think it's something that I'm not sure is sufficient to achieve this greater trust between the two peoples or the two governments. So this is my concern. Again, I'm not arguing against this program, of course.
We are not saying trust the IPC and everything will be fine. To the contrary, we are saying we are working hard on every issue, and we give legitimacy and ownership of the issues to the Palestinian and the Israelis. Right now, the ownership of the issues is being imposed on the people of Palestine and being imposed on the people of Israel by a government that is very narrowly elected in the whole area and does not have legitimacy. We are saying the people of Palestine and Israel together will have the legitimacy and will have the ownership of the issues. They will have, we are talking about 300 parliament members who live in Gaza, who live in Israel, who live in the West Bank, who will have much more legitimacy from the people of Israel and Palestine to decide issues rather than being imposed upon by a very small government that has no legitimacy in the area. And so to the contrary of what you said. All right. Any other comments you want to make?
If you allowed me to answer Professor Medina, it's not, I'm not like going against you because of you. As a matter of fact, I'm happy to sit with somebody like you, and I'm happy to be part of this. But in another time before, I veto an order about opening a Disneyland between Gaza and Tel Aviv or Israel. And I say, okay, there is more important things than Disneyland. The most important thing right now, that we are sitting together. We are talking. You know, as a Palestinian who's been living in America for since 1992 and spent 2 years in Israeli prison in the first Intifada, the first Israeli I ever met was Mr. Joseph Avassar. And for me to meet this gentleman, it makes me start looking different and thinking different and acting different. And instead of us speaking about what the government of Hamas thinking or Abbas thinking or the government of Israel thinking, I need to think about my neighbor of Ofra, what he's thinking. How come I could see you in America? I could sit with you in America. I could be your neighbor in America. We could go to the same mall, to the same restaurant. But in Ofra, somebody will carry me a machine gun if I walk into his gas station. This is what the point of Mr. Avassar idea. And that's why I'm part of it, because we have over 40,000, 50,000 Palestinians working in Israel every day. And these guys communicate with Israelis fine. If you come and ask these people what they're feeling about Israelis, they will tell you some of these bosses or their partners in work in Israel, it's like a family to them. But if you're going to come and ask Ben Gvir what does he think about this, he will tell you, no, we are enemies. We have to kill each other. We have to destroy each other. So the point right now, the most important thing to go, like Mr. Avasar, last week, he was in my house in a beautiful town where is the Israelis carrying the flag and kicking the Palestinian out to Jerusalem. He was in my town with my brother, whereas I announced it in Facebook, and you could see how many people say, welcome, Mr. Avasar, yeah, my Jewish brother in my town. So what makes Avasar different than a guy who lives in Ofra today? What makes you different than Mr. Avasar to go to my home and I go to your home in any settlement in West Bank? So this is the point, my brother. This is the point that it's a big step. And if I can convince my people to see these images, to elect people based of people, not based of what's the security concern of Israel and Hamas and what's the Qatari thing about me. The Qatari will never fix the problem if me and you are not talking together. So this is the point. The point, there is more important things to talk about. The most important thing is for me and you to talk, and we call the land homeland. Because it's illegal for me to live in Tel Aviv, and I may have Jewish DNA in my blood more than any one of you as a Palestinian.
All right. Okay. Let's go on to the next one.
Thank you.
Okay. So now we're going to have a short open discussion. Is the Israeli or the Palestinian governments capable of rebuilding Gaza? Because that's really the critical issue at this time. Professor Barak, let me stop sharing, and we'll have that question. Do you think, Professor Barak Medina, do you think Israel or the Palestinians are capable of dealing with the issues in Gaza and southern Israel at this time?
Yeah, that's a very difficult question. You know, I'm not sure. The question is, what do we mean by saying capable of dealing with the issues? Of course, we know that there is war currently there, and the effect on the ground is that there is no ceasefire. There is no end to this war. I've been outside in the streets yesterday in Tel Aviv, demonstrating to end this war with dozens of thousands of people calling for this end of this war that is senseless, to my view, at this point. Of course, we need the release of the hostages, but I think that we have to conclude to stop this war. But again, I'm referring to what Said has said, in the sense that it's very nice that both of us, or all of us here, can agree on one way or another, but we cannot ignore the reality on the ground. And our aim is to not only to have dreams or hopes, but to find ways to make them real. And in order to make them real, we need the cooperation of people on the ground. And the question is, what is the right way for both governments to rectify the disaster that is currently in Gaza? And I think that, you know, on top of the issue of who is more capable, we have to talk about what should be done. What is the right solution? You know, because just okay, Israel will leave. Let the Palestinians rebuild or do whatever they want and hope for good.
So give us the answers. What are the answers? You asked the questions, but we gave you the answer. It's a federal government for the people of Israel and Palestine. And we are providing a solution. We are providing a mechanism. We are saying what the solution is, but you're only asking questions. What is the answers that you have?
There is no solution here. You can say solution time and again and again. We have the governments on the ground, and they they are going to disregard the decision of this confederation. It's very nice to have confederation. I share with you this dream, but there is no solution. The idea that there is a solution because we just say so. Let's hope that there is a solution and go away. It's not. It doesn't work that way.
Going to ignore 5 million people who voted with 300 parliament members who are elected? How do you know that? Why do you make that assumption?
Yeah, Joseph, let him finish the sentence.
First, we can know that they are going to ignore it because one side continues this occupation for more than 50 years, disregard the fact that there is illegitimacy of this occupation, disregarding the entire international community. So just because several millions of the people here would say so, would make them change their mind, I think this is naive to think that it is enough to make this kind of a vote. The occupation goes on for several reasons. I tried to outline them earlier. And if you don't address these issues, the occupation will not end just because we hope that there is this kind of a mechanism. And the same is true to the Palestinian side. The Palestinians, at least current Palestinians, express their support in Hamas. They share the view that I live inside the Green Line in Israel. I do not live in the West Bank, but nevertheless, where I live in the southern part of Israel, not far from Gaza, subject to the attacks from Hamas, trying to enter my home, I am an illegal citizen in my place. And this vision, it's not something that is just out there. Let's ignore it. We will have the confederation and these views of people that their aim in life is to kill me, to murder me, to rape my daughter, is something that will disappear just because we hope so. I think it's a much longer route to take. If we take this shortcut, we will end up with another vicious circle of war and people killing each other. We have to admit that these two peoples need to build in a gradual process trust in each other. They have to build in a gradual process this issue of democratic governance inside them. We have to convince the Israeli government that the fact that there is this occupation is wrong, cannot continue. We have to try to convince both sides that the two states should be established. And once there are two states there, I fully accept the idea of cooperation between these two states, and in a second stage, maybe in 10 years' time, to have this confederation. I fully agree with it, but to present it as if, well, we have a solution, just grab your hand and take it, and you resist this solution. It's not a real solution. It's an illusion. The idea that we can change the minds of people on the ground. And therefore, if you ask me, who can rebuild Gaza? Who can correct the situation now? I am very sadly answer, I don't know. But I think that neither the Israelis nor the Palestinians, but also not this confederation can solve the problem. There is no simple solution. Well, we need to work it out.
Okay.
So,
the reality is this. The Israeli government has not been able to change it made it worse. And you are claiming that we need to change the Israeli government to reject the occupation that it itself is promoting. So what is more unrealistic? Is it unrealistic to change the Israeli government that is the perpetrator of this political situation? Or is it more realistic to create a different system altogether? And you're saying, well, that's because you're saying that since the Israeli government is the reality, we have to accept that reality. And I'm saying, no, we do not have to accept that reality. We can create a different reality. And yes, it is as simple as voting. Why does everything have to be with explosions? All right. Anybody wants to, Shlomo, you want to say something about Gaza? You need to unmute, Shlomo.
Sorry, Nasir was first. I'll let him, unless he lets me.
The issue I see is that is a lot of what Barak is presenting is based on not necessarily his opinion, but rather the reality of the leadership right now, both with the Palestinians and the Israelis. And I kind of see what he's saying, because it's a frustration, it's a frustrating thing that many people see. And it's that, like me as a Palestinian, I know for a fact that there are still the majority of people who are seeing that, like, resistance, armed resistance and things, and do see Israelis as settlers or colonialists and stuff like this. And the reason is that to offer a solution that doesn't include changing the reality on the ground, like things on the ground need to change. And even like the small things like freedom of movement, less occupation, reduced occupation, and a goal that's
Changed by
ending the
whom?
occupation.
Changed by whom?
What I'm saying, it has to be done by the leadership of both sides. They have to be.
They had 76 years.
But what I'm saying is but the problem we have, Joseph, is that we have an international community that is enabling Israel and that lets it do whatever they want. And then we have, the Palestinian government that's incapable to doing anything. So we are enabling this heroin addiction.
You're pointing out to these governments as incapable of making changes. And at the same time, I asked you, change by whom? And you say by these people.
Well, like I said, but the thing is that change, if you don't have these realities, like, for example, we had the legislation about making Colombia a nicer checkpoint, a more easy to go through checkpoint. That's ridiculous. Colombia checkpoint shouldn't be there, period. It's ridiculous to say, hey, let's take a little bit less. But what I'm saying is, I support Confederation, but at the same time, I just can't go and tell my Palestinian brothers and sisters, hey, let's go forward with this. And meanwhile, occupation is going on. People in prisons are going on. People in prison are being imprisoned. People are being killed, bombed. It has to be both.
We're not excluding the Israeli and the Palestinian government from making the change. Said that at the beginning.
Yes,
but if you are refusing another system and you say, no, I insist on having the same people who failed us for 76 years make the change, then I question your sincerity.
Yes, and that's what, and that's where the confusion is, that people might say that, and I think they say that this is a replacement, 100% replacement, where it has to be part of it, but part of it meaning that the Confederation is part of the solution, but an essential part of the solution also includes the change on the ground that we need for people to get on board with this.
All right.
Yeah, I have a question.
Okay, let's have a post-simulation survey. After participating in the simulation, do you support the
Shlomo wanted to say something.
That's okay. Do you want to go
let's have
on
a post-simulation survey. After participating in the simulation, do you support a common federal government for the people of Israel, the West Bank, and Gaza that will coexist with the Israeli and the Palestinian government? Please vote. This is for everyone. Please vote.
I appreciate your honesty, Barak. I think it was very clear to me.
All right. Okay, so now it's publish the vote. Uh, 37 out of 38 voted yes, which is a lower numbers than what we had, but it's 97%. And 3%, before we had 7% voted no, now we have 3% voting no. But the numbers are lower, but still the percentage is in favor of a federal government. And after the discussion, do you think the Israelis and Palestinian governments are capable of rebuilding Gaza? Please vote on that. All of you, please vote. I don't see the vote, Nasir. Did you?
Which one was it? Which vote? I'm sorry.
Take please put the vote. It does just a vote on. Do you believe that just yes or no vote?
Oh, one second. I'm sorry. This one?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Do you believe the Israeli or the Palestinian governments are capable of dealing with the issues in Gaza? Okay. 5 more seconds to vote. Okay, so publish the vote. Before we had 66% voted no, now it's 70% voting no. And before we had 34% voting yes, now it's 30% voting yes. So more people think that the Israeli and the Palestinian parliament governments are not able to deal with Israel, with the, okay. Now, regarding, so we're going to have an open discussion. I'm going to remind you of the, could the IPC make peace? Please judge us not based on perfection, but based on the alternative. And the alternative is what we discussed, the Israeli and the Palestinian governments. And also go back to the assumptions, if you can, during the open discussions. I just want to remind you that $100 million could make this thing a reality. And Israel and Palestine are spending the Palestinians over $3 billion a week. So $100 million will allow the Israelis and the Palestinians the opportunity to have a federal government and to see whether it could make peace. All right. Professor Barak Medina, do you have closing comments?
I see there are other people who would like to comment.
All right.
So
let's
leave
go
the time
to
for them.
have them ask questions. Shlomo, do you want to ask a question? Then Walter, then Said. If you want to ask questions, now is the time.
The way I look at IPC, and I wonder what Professor Medina thinks about it. I view it as a vehicle to get into the minds and hearts of people. Basically, there is the explicit, of course, willingness to have an alternative government to the rotten government that we right now have, but also to get to the people's mind that we are all humans and we are all equal and we are trying to live in peace together, and that is the way people should think. And the IPC, in a way, is a vehicle towards this number one assumption. If you talk about assumptions, but then I have other questions about. In my opinion, the first thing is ceasefire, completely change the whole structure. And the question to Professor Medina is: Do you see this IPC as contradicting, or parallel, or even helping the idea, whichever it is, the two-state solution, one-state solution? In a way, we are in a one state, and that's another question for later: one state versus two states. But that's later. First of all, let us make peace. What do you think?
Should I refer to it now, Joseph, or
anytime?
It's not here. So maybe we'll take all questions and then refer to them.
Okay.
Yeah, he might have. Yeah, go ahead. I guess
Walter,
I can help moderate if Joseph stepped out for a second. Was that question for Joseph or for Barak?
For Barak. So.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That question was for you, Barak.
Yes.
Yeah, I just thought that. Well, I'll answer very briefly. First, of course, I think that nothing wrong with this idea. It's a nice project. It's an opportunity for Israelis and Palestinians to interact, to discuss how can one oppose it. The only concern is will it be effective? Can it make a real change? And I'm skeptical about that, because if we don't change, the real issues, the issues of Palestinian independence, of Israelis' concerns about security issues, Palestinians' concerns about security issues, and things like that, if we do not solve the issues, I'm concerned that this type of a mechanism will not be helpful. But as I said, nothing to oppose here. Just I'm concerned that I'm skeptic
Well,
whether it can
but
help.
you did say that we need to have two states first.
Again, I think that if we want, again, I'm not objecting anything here. You want to go ahead with it, go ahead. I'm just asking about whether it will be effective. It won't cause any damage. But in order to gain some progress towards peace, I don't see any way to do that without two states. The idea of having this kind of a confederation when there is no Palestinian state is something that seems to me, problematic. Again, I don't see the damage here, the harm, but the benefit is questionable without two states out there.
Well, let me just respond by, I had a good friend who developed cancer. And him and his wife were looking for a cure everywhere in Israel and everywhere around the world, all sorts of cures, whether they are traditional cures or untraditional cures. Why? Because they had a sincere desire to keep my friend and the husband alive. They looked for every option around the world, whatever it takes. When I hear that someone says, well, let's have two states first, or let's have that first, to me, that being naive. Because if you truly want peace, you say, I support every reasonable effort to make peace, especially when I live in a country that has a federal government, that has multiple system of jurisdiction. But if you say I only restrict it to one system that has to be implemented first after 76 years of failure, that to me is being naive and disingenuous. Let's go to Walter.
I've had a question for a long time, and I'm just wondering, has there ever been an opening where Hamas has been given a choice to spare Palestinian lives by surrendering?
I have an answer to you if you like.
I don't know the answer to that.
Who asked the question? I didn't even see who was speaking.
Walter Sharp.
Oh, Walter. Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay.
So I can answer you, Walter, if you like. Or maybe Professor Medina, if he...
No, go ahead, Shlomo, that's fine. Go ahead.
First of all, Hamas tried several times to talk to Israelis, and the answer was bombing. And so the question of, so I'm sorry, so repeat the question again, I'm losing.
Yes, it just seems to me that Hamas could spare a lot of Palestinian lives if they would just surrender and ask for mercy.
No, absolutely not. In the West Bank, they surrendered. And look what is going on there. Look at the ethnic cleansing that is ongoing right now there. And they surrendered a long time ago. And no, surrender by all means. If I were Hamas, I would not. So if I were Palestinians or especially living in Gaza, Israel has to make peace with Hamas. Sorry, that's the reality. And with the whole region, what Israel is doing right now is so horrific. It's so horrible. It is unspeakable. And Walter, this will affect all the Jews eventually. This is a disaster of a proportion that is beyond, is cosmic, and it will cost. There will be a price for it, and that's my worry about it. And that's why I will make any little effort I can to get back to sanity. This is insane, totally insane. And so, no, Hamas cannot just surrender. This is and even the IDF said, right, that the Hamas is not winnable. You cannot. This is an idea. This is, and no. So the answer is absolutely not, and Israel should not even strive for it.
Okay.
But as a
All right,
Palestinian,
let me call the order.
if
Said,
you allowed me,
Meyer, Anna, and Shlomo. Said, go ahead.
if you allowed me, Joseph, for the Hamas
But you need to
part,
ask Professor Medina. We have him. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay,
Address
go
your
ahead.
question to Professor Medina if you can.
I will ask Professor Medina after I say about Hamas. As a Palestinian, I am an enemy of Hamas. I believe Hamas was the creation of the state of Israel. Hamas is not doing anything to help the Palestinian. Hamas has never recognized the Palestinian representative as a PLO. Hamas is dealing with everybody as a woman in the clubs in the night, and anybody pay her more, they will do the job for him. So Hamas does not represent me. And for me to call Hamas making peace with Israel, I believe there is no difference between Hamas and Ben Gvir. They both are financed by the same bosses. And as a matter of fact, when you saw Hamas before the October 7, Netanyahu government used to bring money to Hamas every day, and Qatari, they send it in bags through Tel Aviv airport. My question to Mr. Medina, as a Palestinian, I believe this land is mine. This is my homeland, and I have the right to live anywhere I want, from the river to the sea. What's considered for you as legal and illegal resident in that land? That's my question. I want to know what's your, if you call a guy in Ofra today, is that a legal guy to live next to me and take my land? If you live in Tel Aviv, is this legal to you? If you live in Kfar Qasim, where is legal for you as a citizen of Israel, and where is legal for me as a citizen of Palestine? Thank you.
Well, again, it's not part of this current discussion. I'll just say very briefly, if I live inside the state of Israel as a citizen, I am legal in the very formalistic view. If you talk about legitimacy or something like that, the state of Israel is considered legitimate state. It was founded by a decision of the international community, and the people who live inside the state of Israel, Jews and Arab Palestinians, are legitimate. The state of Israel has the authority to set its immigration policy. Of course, I'm not talking about whether it was just or not to hold activities that were held back in 1948. I'm talking about the reality now. I think that a Palestinian state should be established, and there Palestinians who would like to live there should be legitimate to live there. But of course, if I think these issues are not to be decided unilaterally, just because I think so, this is it. I think these are all issues that should be peacefully discussed. I'm just saying, I referred to your comment earlier in this discussion that I'm illegal in your country. So I'm asking, so where should I live? I don't have any other citizenship.
And I'm asking you
My
back
father
the same
was.
question. I'm asking you back the same question, and you don't
Yeah, so I
answer.
think that I agree with you. I think that
as a Palestinian, I asked you clearly, if you call yourself a legitimate state, I know Israel does not have a sitting border, does not have a constitution, and is recognized by the world. As a Palestinian who's been living under military occupation today, until today, what's considered for me legal to live at in my homeland? Do you consider this to be my homeland as equal as you're looking at it as your homeland? Or you have the right, because you are an Israeli, to come and live in my territory in West Bank, and I cannot even cross the border to go and have a swim with my kids in Yafa beaches. So where is legal for you, and where is legal for me as a Palestinian?
Again, first, I think that Israelis should not live outside of the green line of the state of Israel, where Israeli law applies, and therefore the settlements are illegal. But second, two wrongs do not make a right. The fact that you are wronged one way or another doesn't mean that I too should be considered as an illegal citizen. The fact that you refer to me as an illegal citizen in my home country doesn't make any progress towards recognizing your own rights. In order to recognize your rights, you do not have to deny my rights. It will just perpetuate this circle as if it is a zero-sum game. It's either you or me. If I live there and you don't, so it means I'm illegal and I should be thrown away from here, or the way people treat illegal persons. I think both of us should have rights. And in order to be able to live with each other, I think two states should be established. There is nothing original in this. This is something that was found back in 1947. The reality on the ground is such that there are two peoples that consider this area as their homeland, and they have to share this territory. They should not argue for one state that it is either Jewish or Palestinian. They should split the area and live in each of the states. Again, I'm not arguing that this is the only solution and this is the right solution. I'm just arguing against this idea that if you deny the rights of the Jews in Israel, then you gain something, as if you make any progress in the
Professor, you put
cause for
words
Palestinians.
in my mouth. You put in words in my mouth. I asked you a clear question. You make it clear right now when you said, I don't cross the border of Israel. Anybody go to West Bank, it's this is illegal. So I'm trying to understand.
I'm not the government. I'm not making decisions there. Not
yeah, but you see, you start putting
just like you are not Hamas, I'm not Ben Gvir.
What I'm saying is, if you lived in Ofra, I asked you the question. If you don't, you will consider yourself illegal in my land, correct? That's my point of the question. I'm not trying to tell you you don't exist.
No, but you wrote here. I'm not putting things into your mouth. You wrote in this chat that without knowing where I live, I am just because I'm Jewish, I'm illegal here. This is the only information that you have about me, that I'm Jewish. And the fact that you refer to me just because I'm Jewish, regardless of where I live, as illegal is something that, again, I'm not talking about you personally. I think it's a sentiment that we should be aware of. This denying the right of Jews to live here as if just because we are Jews, we are illegitimate here. And this is something I think that we should work against together. Both people have the right to be here.
Okay, let's go on to Meyer Sankari.
And me.
Yes, thank you, Joseph, for putting this on. It's a very interesting discussion. As you might know, I'm also an alumni of Harvard Law School, except a few years before professor. I graduated in '65. I was a young Zionist who went to live in Israel in 1957.
You graduated in '65?
Yes, from Harvard Law School. I happen to be 85 years old, so I've been around a little bit, and I've been through these wars before. I've seen every war that Israel has faced. I still remember when the UN vote took place, and Abba Eban was there. I listened to that. So I don't know how many of you were around when that happened, but I was there. I also was there when I was born. Germany invaded Poland. My mother survived. So I have a few ties to Israel. I was a young Zionist and went there to live in 1957 on the first year in Israel course. And I worked on kibbutzim, moshavim. I studied in Jerusalem. And I became friendly with the Palestinians through the village called Oasis of Peace, Nuvei Shalom Wahata Salam. And for many years, I was involved with the village. And it taught me something very important. I don't know how many of you, I'm curious if anybody has ever heard of Neve Shalom Wa'at Salam. It was supposed to be the model by which Arab Jewish children and Arab children and Jewish children could sit together and learn their language, their culture, their religion, and experience the holidays together and so forth. And they have created a new citizen. The problem with all of these issues is that we missed the first step and destroyed the basis for a possibility of conversations between children. We have to get rid of the hostile books that are on both sides. We have to get rid, in some way, of getting rid of the notion that Jews don't belong here or that the Palestinians are evil people and will always try to kill us. That has to be changed, but it only comes generationally. At this time in life, I'm very fearful because sitting in Los Angeles, where I live, I'm seeing the hostility toward Jews because of what this government has just done to the Jewish reputation by destroying our moral values. This is very upsetting, not only to me, but many of my friends and colleagues and leaders in the community. They don't want to talk against Israel, but the problem is we're stuck with Netanyahu, who is the worst of the worst possible leaders at this time. And I give you this background because I love the idea of a confederation, but the reality is it can never exist without the infrastructure of willingness and cooperation of both sides somehow to transform the hostilities toward each other and bring about at least an ability to sit down and discuss the issues. So my problem is that we're so far away from educating our kids not to hate each other, because this is what what the attack on Gaza has done. It's definitely created new generations of Palestinians who are going to be hostile to Israel because they remember this horrible experience that they went through, even if they survived. So I'm all in favor of the Confederation, but what Professor has said is absolutely practical, pragmatic, and true. If you don't have the willingness on both sides to create something that will be better than the alternative, I remember the words "ein b'reira," right? No other choice. And that was because that's what drove us as young Zionists. We didn't have any choice. We have to build this country because there was no other place for Jews to go. Ein b'reira. Now the problem is there's no choice but to bring about some kind of settlement between Palestinians and Jews to live in the same land that belonged to both of them historically. And we have to change our history books. We have to change the attitudes in religion. The religion is promoting such hostility toward each side. This has become a religious war, and it's spilled over to all Jews around the world. We are all suffering because of loss of moral high ground. So I hope that with this discussion, we can continue to talk with our Arab brethren. My father was born in Damascus. We are Arab Jews. So I feel very close to Arabs. But I do also have fear because they speak to me sometimes in hostile ways. One student when I was going to Texas Christian in 1957, one Palestinian student there said, "I can talk to you here, but if you go to Israel, I will kill you." That, creates fear on my side. It makes it hard for me to have an open discussion, but we've got to get past this in some way. I happen to be a mediator in this world today for the past 25 years, and I don't think it's even possible for mediators to step in at this point with the hostility going on until there's a change in government. I think the whole thing starts with a change in the Israeli government and the attitudes that are impressed.
All right.
So that's my attitude.
Thank you. Thank you, Meyer. Good. All right, let's go to Anna. Anna, please.
Yes,
me
I've been
after.
very interested with all the good sense that's spoken here. And I wonder, as a starting point, in fact, I'm sure there are many, but would it be possible to consider, when it's safe, when Israel has stopped invading Gaza, when it's safe, could a task force of Israelis and Palestinians go in to start rebuilding Gaza? Baby steps, if you like, but people working together, which is, I know is possible, and a gesture, more than a gesture of goodwill, but a very practical way of showing that it's possible to work together. Could IPF think of
IPC.
sponsoring, IPC, sorry, think of sponsoring something like that?
Well, we proposed a lot more than that. We're proposing to be the government of the whole area, and to bring the budget and to bring the infrastructure to build more than baby steps, giant steps.
Yes,
That's what we are proposing.
but that might take time. What about something that can be done more or less immediately?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's going to take time. It can, the creation of this government is very easily obtained within a year. And it would be a game changer if we create this government. The reality will change. I mean, when we speak about reality, for some reason, we think of the bad reality as the only reality, and creating a new reality to be unrealistic. That's the issue that we are facing. All right, let's go to Samir, and then Nurit.
Yes. Hi, Joseph. Where
Hi,
are you
Samir.
now, Joseph?
I am in LA.
You are in LA.
Yeah,
Welcome
but
back.
I'm going back to the area in October, November.
Good. All right. Hi, everybody. Yes, after I have listened to what Professor Medina said in regard to two-state solution, I believe that the two-state solution is a Ponzi scheme, and it's proven to be, and Israel exhausted that idea and destroyed it. And actually, what it did meanwhile, it just increased the number of settlements and settlers from in 1993, it used to be like 150,000 settlers in the West Bank. Today, around 800,000 settlers. So forget about that two-state solution. What I believe that the best solution...
It's a fraud.
It's a fraud. Definitely it's a fraud. I mean, it's proven to me for the last 4 years I have been involved in the whole conflict. On my hand, I saw it, how it was a Ponzi scheme and it's a fraud. So the best solution, in my opinion, is one secular democratic state. And that's taken from reality. Today, in reality, we have one apartheid state. We just need to change it to secular democratic state. And that's the easiest thing to do. And it does not require to transfer, does not require actually any negotiations. It doesn't require transfer of anybody. It doesn't require to say that this is legal and illegal, who's illegal and illegal. Forget all of that. That's it. Everybody will be equal citizens, and the land can take 14, 15 million people to live in Palestine.
What about that, Professor Medina? Isn't the one-state solution the best solution? Samir is saying, you don't really need to negotiate. You can just
you don't need to transfer. Yeah, you don't need to transfer anybody, and everybody stays, and they will accept all refugees. It doesn't matter. I mean, refugees or Jewish or Christian or Muslims or whatever. I mean, Palestinians, doesn't matter. I mean, open society and one state, and end of the story.
Professor Medina, what do you think of that?
we know who the prime minister or the president is going to be, right? It's going to be Yahya Sinwar. And we know what Yahya
How
Sinwar
do you
would
know
like to
that?
do.
How do you know
We
that?
see the polls. We see the polls regarding what Palestinians say that they would vote for if they have the right to vote. And they say, well, you can say that they just mislead us or they don't say the right thing. I'm not in the business of calling others doing fraud or Ponzi schemes or something like that. I respect everybody's views. I'm just saying that the concern is that the Palestinians would act as they say they would act. I trust them. I believe them. And what they say, according to the polls, and it goes on for a long months now or years, before October 7, after October 7, they say that they would vote for Hamas. Now, let's hope that this is wrong. They would not vote Hamas, and Hamas, or that they
But
would
that's
vote
within
Hamas
the
and Hamas will change
Palestinian,
view.
that's
But
not for
let's take
one
the
state. That's
concern.
not for one state. That's not really what they're saying in the constellation of a one state. If there is one state, some Palestinian, then there is going to be a secular government. He's speaking
Right.
about a secular government, not Hamas, not the religious, not Jewish, not
You decide for the people whom to vote. You disqualify Hamas from the vote, from the ballot. How come that
No,
you
no,
decide for them
no.
whom to vote? They want to
No,
vote
there would
Hamas.
be
They
one
say so.
state with one constitution that requires everyone to be secular. The
Who
government
writes this
is
constitution?
secular.
You write the constitution. The people should write the
No,
constitution.
I am not.
The
I am
people
not
say
favoring.
they want Hamas.
No.
What can you tell them?
Okay,
That they are wrong.
So you're basically saying that it is impossible to create one state because it is an impossibility to create a constitution that would be acceptable to everyone, that separate religion from government, that would prohibit religious government from being created. That's basically
Religion is
well,
not the issue
let
here.
me say, Dr. Mehdi Amin, let me say, in South Africa, 30 years ago, it was possible. It was an apartheid system and it was dismantled. So why Israel is 30 years behind and we still talk about, oh, it is not possible. What's the matter with the Israelis, I mean? What's the matter with anybody, I mean, living in
I care for my life.
Palestine?
Maybe you can sit somewhere else and your life are secure. My life are under threat. The Hamas got the rule of the Gaza Strip, and if he got the opportunity, he would rule the entire state.
Well,
and Hamas tried to kill me, and I fight for my life. The fact that you call me racist or apartheid or things like that would not change reality. The reality is that Hamas imposes a threat on my life. And you cannot ignore the fact that Hamas imposes a threat to my life and my life of the people. And in order to live together, we have to separate. We have to live in two separate states. This is what we need. And you
the Israeli state created Hamas. The Israeli state
created Hamas, Mr. Medina. You created
the Israelis do not tell the Palestinians whom to vote for, regardless of who created Hamas.
Mr. Medina,
who created Hamas? It doesn't matter who created Hamas. I think it's wrong.
We all know that you
Hamas.
created Hamas.
I am not responsible for any of this. You call me, you ask me to take the risk that there will be an open vote, and let's hope that the Palestinians would vote other as they say that not as they state that they will vote, and will vote for someone else. How come?
What
is the basis of this prediction of yours? You suggest that the Israeli government tell the Palestinians whom to vote? What does it mean that Israel is creating Hamas?
Dr. Medina,
This is
Israel
a
today
match.
is controlling the whole land. Israel is the occupying force. Israel is the colonizer. Israel the apartheid state. Israel control everybody.
Let's go to Nurit.
So they have to initiate
in the spirit of dialogue, could we please not speak over each other and let people finish their sentences?
Yeah. Let's go to Nurit Baruch, please. Nurit.
Does Shlomo have his hand up? Shlomo, do you have a?
Yeah, but Shlomo spoke and Nurit.
Okay, go ahead. Okay,
I'm trying to get someone new.
No problem. I just want to manage this.
Okay, Nurit, can you? Are you with us, Nurit? You need to unmute if you are muted.
Yeah, I'm unmuted. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Oh, great. Okay. So it's heartbreaking what's happening in the whole area. And my hope was when I went to the border between France and Germany, the Alsace-Lorraine, they had wars that lasted for hundreds of years. They conquered each side various times. At one point, they decided that they're going to share everything. The water in the Rhine, they have the same crops, and they also even fought against the atomic plant that was going to be built there. And I thought it's a matter of time. And I think, like the gentleman from Los Angeles said, it's about education. And one of the elements in education that really touches me, and I hope that this confederation will really address, is the fact that there is a intergenerational trauma on both sides. There is a pain there that doesn't go away. The Israelis have the pain of a persecution through thousands of years. The Palestinians have the pain of losing land, of losing family, of losing. So we have to address the trauma, and we do it by education. So maybe now the confederation or two-state solution or whatever is not going to happen. But I have hope that over the years, the two sides will realize that nobody is going away, and they have to make life, good life for everybody. And that it's also economically better for everybody. So that's my 2 cents. I love you. Thank you for doing this. I really appreciate that.
All right. I just have a question for you. You said the word we. We need to, who is we?
Both of us, both nations, both people. The suffering is everywhere. So we have to address trauma. I would like to be the president of the happiness ministry of the Confederation, where I will really go and do the trauma work like they did in Rwanda. And also even in South Africa, they did trauma work, to make sure that they don't kill each other after the change. So, but it takes time. And I think it's good to start to build and not to hope that it's going to happen tomorrow.
Do you support the federal government for the people of Israel and Palestine?
Yes, I do. I do.
Thank you. All right, Shlomo, before let's have Wolf Ehrlichman. He didn't have a chance to speak.
I'm sorry that I have to leave in 2 or 3 minutes. We are beyond our time, right?
Yeah, no, I apologize. Wolf?
Okay.
Wolf and then Shlomo, and then we are done.
I'd like to speak to the point about the fact that the people, Palestinians in one state, will vote for Hamas. And that's according to Barak, Mr. Medina, I guess, that all the public opinion polls shows that Hamas, will be the. Now, it seems to me that he's ignoring context. He's ignoring history. That the reason why they vote for, or not that they would vote, but the public opinion polls show support for Hamas is because Hamas did something. And the polls also show that they support a two-state solution. But you have to realize the context. The context is that everybody's saying that that's two states the only realistic thing. You can't have a one state, it's a non-starter, all of that stuff. The other thing in terms of the back, so that if you have an actual election and a serious situation, that's different from taking a poll where you're being told, but anything else but a two-state is off the table. Also, in terms of the history, Hamas was elected and I don't know the details of how, but they were in charge of Gaza, and the PA was in charge. But then Condoleezza Rice and George Bush and the PA cooked up a scheme to go in and take out Hamas. The United States trained soldiers for the PA, and Hamas defeated them. The original plan was to defeat Hamas. So now it's characterized as Hamas did a coup. Hamas took over. That's not the case. Hamas was defending itself. Now, given all that history, you have to look at how Hamas is responding. I mean, they're saying that you have to have, you know, armed force, but that's because of the history. So I think you have to realize the context. You have to realize the situation, and to just say, well, I'm sitting here and they said they're going to kill me, is part of the hasbara of Israel. I'm not saying it's not true. They've killed people, no doubt about that. But there's this whole hasbara that Israel has the right to defend itself, and all these people are out of nowhere, for some reason, they want to kill us. We don't know why. We're happy here. Everybody's happy, but for some reason, these people, you know. So there is no second Big Bang. There was one Big Bang. Big Bang. There was no history before the Big Bang. But October the 7th is not the second Big Bang. There is a history, and so, and in my, like, Jeff Halper and his group have talked about a one state. Other people have talked to one state. If you have a two-state situation, it just perpetuates the existing situation. You're going to still have the other, and you're still going to have your segregated school system. You've got your segregated Israeli system, where they're taught that the Palestinians never existed, and then when they're 18, they're going to go fight the enemy. And who's the enemy? Isn't just the Americans or the Canadians, it's the Palestinians. So when you've got that two-state situation, you're just perpetuating the existing situation. The only situation that's going to work is a one-state situation where people live with each other, and initially they have to be forced to live with each other. And the Jews for sure are not going to be enthusiastic. But the fact of the matter is that, as other people have said, when you live together, when you live side by side, when you go in the same schools, the children, the kids themselves will change. As long as you don't have all that propaganda at them. Anyway, that's what I have to say.
All right, thank you. Barak, you want to respond to
I'll
Ken?
say very, very quickly two comments. First, there is a risk here. One should be aware of the risk, and the risk is that Hamas takes over. And when I say Hamas, I'm not referring to this specific group. It's the ideology that these Jews do not have the right to be here, and there is a risk. Now, I of course willing to accept it that no one knows what the outcome of this kind of one state will be, but it's a risk that one should be aware of and take it into account. And this risk is something that is of grave concern, because it might be irreversible if this kind of solution is chosen. But the other point is, regardless of what I think, assume that you convinced me. We have to find a solution that has at least some practical possibility of being accepted by the Jewish community in Israel. The Jewish community in Israel is struggling with the idea of two states. And this is, I think, one step too far to expect the Jewish community to agree to be a minority in this one-state solution, in which it is subject to this power of the Palestinians. Now, you may say they are wrong, they live in fear, they live in the past, they disregard the prospects of peace and things like that. Everything is true, but they are there, and you cannot go beyond this obstacle just by saying so. And I think that we need a process here. And of course, you're right that the two-state might perpetuate this hate between the two peoples. I'm not sure that things will go in the right direction. But the hope is that the Palestinian state, if established, will employ democratic principles, will show that Hamas ideology is not the ideology of the majority. And in the future, when these two states live next to each other in peace, then you can speak about this confederation idea of one state or things like that. The idea that we can jump, we can make this leap from this hostility, from this type of two peoples that try to kill each other, to live together, is something that disregards the reality on the ground. And I'm not inventing anything here. In 1947, the UN Commission that was established specifically for this reason, to inquire whether one-state solution should be imposed or two-state solution, and they found it, and they were unbiased. There are people from all around the world here, not related to the two peoples here. They found that the only viable solution is two states, and I don't think anything has changed from then. So, but again, my position is not the relevant one. It's the position of the population that we want to gain.
What you said is not true. The commission was led, one of the people was a guy called Lester Pearson. He's a Canadian. He was a Canadian civil servant who later on became Prime Minister of Canada. He was a Christian Zionist. His thumb was on the side of the Jews when they were talking about partition. So this was not an objective process.
All right.
Just because one person was with this kind of affiliation. Again, it's a different perspective. I don't think it is wise to have a discussion when one people say to another, you are wrong, this is not true. You can say that your perspective is different. My perspective is different than yours, but we can discuss it without talking to each other as this way. But again, it's not me that you have to convince. You have to convince the people out there, because even if we agree on one state, there is not a single chance, not a single digit chance that the Israelis will agree to that. And we need to buy their trust in a gradual process. This is it. And again, it's regardless of what we personally think.
All right, let's go to, we are way past the 2 hours. So make it short if you can, Shlomo, and then Fumiko.
Yeah, very quickly. So, wow, so many people talk here. So just a concept or something that some other wiser people than me say, that once there will be peace and even one state, Hamas will lose its power. Actually, will become, like any other party. It's like the Etzel and Lehi back there. They, once Israel established, they became, political parties. So it's a possibility. Something, well, I have a lot to say about what Mayor Sankari said, but I will save it for another time. I think he missed.
Let's go to Shlomo. I need to rush. I'm sorry. Let's go to Fumiko, and then we're done.
Yep. Yeah, I just want to say something about education. Someone mentioned a little bit, but not. I just want to tell this story, kind of. So when Israeli student, university student came to Japan, and then he showed me textbook, and which textbook at school, in I think occupied territory, and then so that they just show that kind of it's easy to and to find out, to just grow, just to grow, kind of develop a kind of an how should I say, typical and image about Palestinian, how they are treated, actually that's, and then so the other day I just watched the TV, and then so at school I think Israeli, very and how should I say, lovely children, they're singing a song that is a very and how should I say, and song about kind of that this is my land. Okay, like, you know,
Nationalistic.
yep, right. And so, but I was kind of in a shock to see, and so they are growing up that kind of education. The same way, okay, the first impression about Palestinians to me was like that, okay, and so they just try to kill. They try to kill Jewish, okay, that kind of message, you know, conveyed through the education, under the name of the education. And but the same thing, okay, so that was about 30 or 40 years ago, okay, when Israel student came. And then I just kind of create the image about the Palestinian. And but the other day, it's just so beautiful, okay, pretty, children, singing a song, and then so that also they just print kind of put an emphasis, okay, on the how, okay, we have to think
Kumiko,
about.
can you ask your question, please?
Yeah, let this, I mean, he said that he had to go 2 minutes ago, about 15 minutes ago. So, I mean, he's been very
Yeah.
patient. Wrap it up.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right.
Awesome.
I would like to add one more sentence because you kind of interrupted me.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, I fully understand the fear that Dr. Medina has, and many of my friends back in Israel. And yes, I would be worried. And almost any solution will be scary. And part of it is because what Israel is doing is unforgivable. And if I put myself in the shoes of the Palestinians, I would say, I'm sorry. I will not forget. I will not forget, I will not forgive, and I will take my revenge. And that's fearful. That's where Israel is now, unfortunately. And I understand you. And by the way, thank you very much for have all this patience here to listen to us, and we listen to you too. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Barak, you want to say concluding words before we thank you?
I'm so grateful for this discussion. I think the only thing that we have is hope, and I think that Joseph's efforts are highly appreciated. I really hope that this initiative will be realized and will help us make this progress towards peace. So let's hope for better times.
You
All right.
support this?
Thank you so much, Barak. I appreciate you coming on
Thank you.
and taking the pressure from me and all the audience.
Thank you, Barak.
It's very commendable. I hope you don't see this as a personal attack on you as a person, and we did not mean that. I did not mean that. You were very, very gracious. You accepted our invitation, and that's very commendable for a person of your magnitude in the University of Jerusalem. That speaks a lot of your integrity, and I'm very appreciative, and I want to thank you for coming, and hopefully we'll be able to continue with the discussion. Thank you
Thanks
all.
for the invitation. Yeah.
All
Free
right, thank you so much.
Palestine.
Thank
Okay,
you.
bye-bye.
Free Palestine.
Bye.
Okay.
Bye,
Bye.
everyone.
Free
Thank you very much.
Palestine.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Yes, free Palestine. Bye.
Free Palestine.
Bye.
All right. Thank you so
Bye-bye.
much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye.